Hello, seniors. So, as you guys are getting started with your narrative writing unit, we need to talk through the writing rubric for our narrative unit. So, as you'll see here on the page, it's just a Google Doc and a lot of boxes. It just looks like a giant grid, like most rubrics look like. So, we need to talk about the different categories that I'm looking at when you write your narrative piece. So there are 4 large categories, and we're going to start with structure. I'm going to look at your technique, your analysis, and then your mechanics. And then within those 4 larger categories, we have smaller categories within each. So within structure, we have 3 smaller categories. So of course, I'm going to be looking at your introduction. Your narrative has to have an introduction into it. Then we're going to move on to idea and developments or sequencing. So does your story have a good flow to it? Does it make sense, and do your ideas develop over time, or are they pretty stagnant? And then we're going to have a closing or an end paragraph. So does your story wrap up? Is there an ending to it? Is there a closing to it? And does it not just leave us wondering what's going to happen next? All right, and then we're going to look into technique. Within technique, there are 2 other categories. So narrative technique, that's going to be things like dialogue, pacing, description. You're always going to want to shoot for this. For number 4, I believe in you guys. I really think you can get there. But in order to pass or get a sufficient grade, we're going to look at this middle column here in proficient or 3. So with the narrative techniques, you'll have to have at least 2 narrative techniques that I see within your narrative piece. So you could have dialogue or pacing, your description can be really laid out and really powerful. As long as you have 2 of those narrative techniques within your narrative piece, you are going to get that 3 for narrative technique. Now, if you decide to put in 3 or more, you're going to be in that 4 column for exceeds expectations here. All right, going on to word choice. That's exactly how it sounds, word choice. Are your words strong? Are they reflective of what you're actually trying to say, or are you using pretty cliched terms and words or very overused words? Try to avoid that as much as possible. Moving on to analysis, there's only one category within the bigger category of analysis, and that's analysis of content. Now, with analysis of content, think of that as, are you reflecting on what you're writing about within your writing? So are you talking about the effect that this certain moment in time, are you talking about the effect that it had on you in your life, right? Because this narrative piece should be something, what you're writing about, the event that you're writing about, should be something that is or has been life-changing, or that there is a message that the reader can take away, like some kind of life lesson that the reader can take away with it. So, is there an analysis of content going on? Is there some kind of reflection or analyzing of the event within the story? And then we're moving on to that last category there, mechanics. This just is looking at like conventions of spelling, punctuation, grammar, capitalization, all that boring stuff. But it's not boring to me as your English teacher, right? Because if I'm reading through your story and your mechanics and your conventions are all over the place, it's hard for me to really narrow in and concentrate on the story. And I want to hear and read the story and be able to enjoy it and appreciate it. So make sure that you are really looking at those conventions with the spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization. Make sure you're really paying attention to those things, because as an English teacher and anybody else who's going to read your writing, it's really hard to get over those conventions, because it's just like this roadblock for me that I have a really hard time getting over and getting past to get to the real meat of the story. And I should have started with this. The standard that I'm going to be looking at and grading it up against is writing 12.3, and this is just assessing whether or not you can write a narrative that you can write a narrative to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, well-chosen details, and well-structured event sequences. Okay, so basically, can you write a narrative, and can you write it well, and do I know that it's a narrative just by reading it? And because we are moving toward that standard reference grading, you will see then obviously you have this proficiency scale of 1 to 4, 1 being emergent, needing some work, and 4 being exceeds expectations. So I want you all to shoot for number 4. Please don't feel like you can't do that, because you can. I want you to just try your best, and you have this rubric ahead of time to look through to see what I am looking for and what I am grading you on in this narrative unit. So that's all I have for walking you through the narrative rubric. Of course, if you have any questions, reach out as soon as possible so we can get those answered and get you well on your way with your narrative piece, okay? All right, thanks guys.